This is Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today let's learn to play Attack. Attack was released in 2003 by Eagle Games. It's a light war game set in a World War II type era. Attack is often described as a game that's a lot more complex than Risk, but a lot less mechanics than Axis and Allies. It's also a game that's World War II themed, but not hung up on trying to recreate history. So let's take a look. In this first part of the series, we will cover Attack's basic rules. The basic rule set contains all the bits that you see here. The art and the quality of the bits is really top-notch. I only have two real complaints here. The first is, although the board is very beautiful, it is very hard to see the territory lines. The second is the land units. They come in two sizes, and the larger size, which is supposed to represent 5 pieces, is really hard to distinguish from the smaller size. Let's start with the basic setup of the game. Step 1. Each player rolls 2 regular dice and are ranked by the results to form the order of play. Step 2. Choose your unit color. Step 3 is collect all the starting units you'll need to start populating the board. To cut down on setup time, I recommend putting the starting units in their own Ziploc bag and handing them out when the colors are chosen. Step 4, here's where it gets interesting. It's time to choose a region for your capital. So following the order of play, each player will select a region on the map. I've taken the map here and colored in all the regions so it's easier to see. When you've decided on a region, put down your capital unit as well as one of the infantry pieces from your starting units. Step 5. Once each player has selected a region for their capital, you'll cycle through the order of play and select 3 more regions and place an infantry unit on each region. Now it's time for step 6. Each player following the order of play will put down 5 units in the regions they own. This process will continue until all the remaining units are placed. Now that we got the board set up, let's look at the actions each player can take during their turn. During a player turn, there are 7 actions that are available, but you can only select 3. You can only choose an action once, except for the diplomatic blitz, and you can do that all 3 of your actions if you want to. Let's move through these one at a time and see what they do. The first is the move phase, so let's look at some move basics. Of the 4 units, infantry and artillery can move 1 region at a time, and tanks and planes can move 2. Your troops can cross the ocean by using the gray sea lanes. Smaller seas with an anchor symbol allow you to move amongst the countries freely there through the sea. You'll also notice several sea lanes that seem to go nowhere. These are the sea lanes that connect to the eastern half of the board when you buy the expansion. Early in the game, you'll spend a lot of time fighting neutral territories to build up your country. When you attack a territory that's not occupied by another player, you will draw a card from the economics deck, and the instructions at the bottom will tell you who you have to fight to take that territory and claim that card. So how does the combat work? The key battle mechanic in Attack is to roll the same symbol as your troops to score a hit on the enemy. All hits against the enemy are taken away in the order of elimination, starting with infantry, then tanks, then artillery, then planes. This is how I set up my board. I use a dice, or 2 dice, to track the number of spots in the front line. Every round of combat, the spaces in the front line increase by 1, so it's easy to track it with a dice. Round 1 starts with 4 slots in the front line, and then it increases every round. Extra units in the battle wait in the reserve area until either there's a casualty or another spot opens on the front line. Here's a quick example. So we roll the dice, and each side gets a casualty. Once you remove the dead, it's time for round 2. So now flip the dice to 5, and now you have 5 slots in your front line. So move up your reserve units to fill those slots, and it's time to fight again. Every round, you add another slot to the front line, and you continue battling until no one remains. This is a fight to the death. After a successful battle, if you still have tanks and planes, you can choose to launch a BLITZKRIEG move. The BLITZKRIEG move essentially is a free move just for tanks and planes. Attack's basic rules has a very simplified mechanic for the Navy. Only one player with their fleet of ships can control the seas at a time. The first player to claim the seas gets control. Well, at least until another player takes out their fleet, and then they can control the seas with their fleet. So why control the seas? So when you control the seas, you can blockade amphibious movement through the sea lanes, as well as stop trade amongst other players who need to use the sea. So let's see how these sea battles work. Each side places their cards face down on the table across from each other. Obviously, you want to keep secret from the other player which ships you're placing in what order. Next, flip over the cards and reveal the pairings. Then you'll want to look and see if there are any modifiers you need to consider before you roll the dice. Each ship has certain advantages against other types of ships. To conduct the battle, roll 2 regular dice for each ship and add the modifiers. The highest number wins. All ships sink with 1 hit except the battleship, which is damaged and can retreat. Remove the damaged and sunken ships, reinforce if you can, and continue the battle until you can see who controls the seas. A strategic move is really just a fancy way of saying a redeployment. You can't fight anyone during a strategic move. You can just move units from one of your territories to another as long as they're connected. However, if you plan to redeploy across a sea lane and another player owns the sea, they can block you and shut down your move. You can only move to the ocean and that's it. Diplomatic blitzes are pretty cool. Instead of fighting neutral regions and losing units, why not use propaganda and just convince them to join you? This is the one action you can use all 3 times in a turn. To see if you're successful, roll 2 regular dice. If the neutral region is bordering your territory, you only need to roll an 8 or more. If it's farther away, you need to roll a 9 or more. If you beat the number, you get to control the region, you get to add a free infantry to the region, and you get to draw an economic card. It's a great deal. If you fail, they don't like your message, and the other players get a chance to try to recruit them instead. If you decide to build new units, you basically fire up your industry and add up all the points to see what you can buy. To do this, you count up your total points. So you get 10 points for every capital, and you get the points printed on each of your economic cards. If you have a full suit of cards, then your points double. The full suit is essentially oil, minerals, factories, and rail transport, but not population. You can then buy your units with the points you collected. But be sure to use all the points you can because none of the remaining points roll over to the next turn. Foreign trade is essentially opening up an opportunity to swap cards with another player. The trick is your territories need to be connected to trade goods. And like always, if you need to trade across a sea lane and neither of you own the sea, then you can be blocked by the person who does. And that about wraps it up for these basic rules. The basic rules is a good way to baby step your way into the more advanced mechanics that you'll see in the expansion and the deluxe rules. So grab some friends and give it a shot and get acclimated. I've seen used copies of this game go for about $10 and new copies for about $20, so it's not hard on the wallet either. This is a great little light war game that gets even better with the expansions and the deluxe set, which we will cover in the next episodes. See you then.